Whether Raheem Kassam, someone most Australians probably never heard of before, should be allowed into the country to speak at a Conservative political conference taking place next week. As mentioned, there are a number of government backbenchers who are due to speak at this conference. One of them is the LNP Senator Amanda Stoker, who joins me now. Thanks for your time this afternoon.
Hi, David.
So should Raheem Kassam be allowed into the country?
Well, like you, I didn't know who he was until the Labor Party started carrying on like pork chops this week. But
so you had never heard of the guy?
I'd never heard of the guy, right. No. And like everyone I know from the lineup, and the long lineup of speakers, are really credible local Conservative politicians and thinkers and academics and commentators. So it's all pretty crazy.
They're bringing out someone that even you haven't heard of.
That's right. Okay. But you know what? I'm not afraid to walk into a room with people I don't know, listen to their views, debate them if they're wrong.
I'll come to that. The question about whether he should be allowed into the country is a visa decision. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I don't think that's a reason to deny him a visa. His views, or at least the ones they've been quoting, right, they're crass and they're rude and I don't approve of them and I don't like him. But he hasn't incited anyone to violence, which is what hate speech is, despite the way that it's loosely bandied around. He hasn't committed a crime, and it's not appropriate to use visas as a form of censorship of opinions that you don't like.
Did you support the government decision to ban Milo Yiannopoulos, David Icke, Gavin McInnes over recent months?
Look, the only one I guess had high visibility on was Milo Yiannopoulos, and I didn't support that decision.
So that was the wrong...
For much the same reason.
So your government got it wrong on that?
Look, I think so, but we're a team and, you know, others in the team thought differently. But I've got a view that Milo is a bit of a twit, a provocateur. I don't agree with all the things that he says, but they're not illegal, they don't incite violence, they don't meet the test for hate speech, and so we shouldn't be using visas for censorship.
And what about those other two that I mentioned there, Gavin McInnes, David Icke? Did you have a problem with them being banned?
Look, I haven't gone through all the details of their circumstances, so...
OK, but you don't think Milo or Raheem Kassam have said anything that would be regarded as hate speech? The focus has been on a couple of things that Raheem Kassam has said. He's been very critical of Islam and has said that Quran is fundamentally evil. You don't regard that as hate speech?
Well, if you put it in the context of him being a man who was brought up in, you know, his ethnic community as a Muslim man, he knows it well, and he's somebody who has since become an atheist. He's got a really interesting perspective on what it's like to live in that faith that someone like me doesn't have. I don't know whether his views are right or wrong, but I'm prepared to listen to him before I make a call.
You don't know if the Quran is fundamentally evil?
I haven't read it ear to ear, a book to... You know, I haven't read it, but I doubt that's the case. But I'm prepared to listen to people before I judge them, yeah. But
this is obviously one of the world's great faiths, along with Christianity and Judaism. You're not sure, though, whether their holy book is fundamentally evil?
Look, I don't think it is, right?
You don't think it is?
No, I don't. But I'm not a theologian.
What about the Bible?
Well, at least I've read that one, right?
Torah?
Nope, haven't read the Torah.
Do you think that's fundamentally evil?
Probably not, but I haven't read it, you know? So, I mean, I think we've got to be very careful about making all people commentators on all things. It's OK to listen to people who know a subject well, hear what they've got to say, debate the points that you think might be wrong and go from there.
His other comment that, of course, he has expressed regret over relates to Nicola Sturgeon. This is a tweet that she should have her legs taped shut so that she can't reproduce. What do you make of that?
Oh, it's horrible, right? I think it's really tacky and rude and disrespectful and not how good people behave to one another, right? But is it hate speech? Is it violence? No. And there's a world of difference between being not very classy and being someone who has committed the crime of hate speech.
So you don't have a problem appearing on the same conference program as this guy?
Well, look, I'd like to have known a bit more about this before I signed on, but I think the way to deal with it...
Would that have made a difference if you'd known a bit more about...
Look, probably not, because I've got a view that in this role, as a politician, you should be talking to people from all walks of life every day, and you're not going to agree with them all.
Where would you draw the line, though?
Well, I still think even with someone I really, really disagree with, you show up, you debate them, you stand up for and own your own beliefs, but being in the same room as someone else...
Holocaust denier? Would you appear at a conference with a Holocaust denier?
Well, I have called out and spoke against Holocaust deniers before. So...
But would you speak at a conference with one?
Look, I wouldn't actively seek it out, right? But if I found myself in a room with a Holocaust denier, I would smack them down for the stupidity of their beliefs, because that's how good ideas rise to the top.
So will you do that next week with Raheem Kassam?
If the things he says are objectionable, yes.
Are they?
I don't know what he's going to say.
But no, but things that he has said in the past, you've obviously expressed some disdain for what he's quoted as saying.
We're speaking on different days. I'm probably not even going to run into him. You know,
No.
I mean, it's ridiculous, the beat up over this. But I think we need to, as a society here, get really serious about the way that this deplatforming approach encourages people not to engage with people who are wrong and convince them to be better, but it encourages you to try and find out what people believe before you arrive and then hide among a group of people who already agree with you. And that's a recipe for a torn, divided society. It is not good for us.
And coming back to the first point you made about using the visa system to prevent free speech, you don't think Milo Yiannopoulos should have been stopped from coming to Australia? And look, admittedly, you're not sure about the other two, you haven't looked into them, but do you think at all people should be banned from coming for something they've said?
I don't think we should be using visas to censor people's points of view, provided they are within the law.
So the line there is if they are actually inciting
if they are
violence.
inciting violence, because that's when speech becomes hate speech, despite the loose way it gets thrown around in this place.
But hate speech, you don't think, is simply vilifying someone's religious views?
But vilifying is prompting someone to act in a hateful way. And if we're not prompting action, it's not hate speech. So I think if we're just expressing controversial points of view, then that's not a reason to deny somebody the opportunity to be here. But that doesn't mean they should go without criticism.
Sure.
They should still be taken to task on every single one of their ideas if they are foolish or illogical or wrong. Take them down. But to prevent them from being able to express them, I think is the sign of a really sick and divided society.
Let me ask you about this news this afternoon. Israel Folau, you've been a defender of him in his fight against Rugby Australia. He, of course, expressed his religious views and got the sack. What about his cousin, Josiah? He's now reportedly been let go from his job at a Catholic school for expressing his religious views. Do you have a problem with that?
Well, I don't know all the details, right? I only found out about it as I walked in. But it sounds to me like the situation might be a little bit different, because instead of having a role that's got nothing to do with religion, it sounds like Josiah's working at a Catholic school doing a job that seems to have a pastoral role with the Catholic students. And
he's a boarding supervisor. I'm not sure what that involves, but...
I mean, I think that means you've got a pastoral care kind of role for boarding students. Right. But if you're going to say really bad things about the Catholic Church while you're working for a Catholic school supervising Catholic kids, I think, you know, there's a problem there.
So Catholic schools or religious bodies generally should have a different rule when it comes to being able to sack someone for expressing their religious view?
Well, the short answer is yes, and I think the reason is this. You know up front, when you take a job with a religious organisation, that they stand for particular religious beliefs. And you've got a choice about whether you want to get on board with a job in an organisation that stands for those things, or to go somewhere where it's got a secular approach, religion's not relevant, you can do the things that you do without religion being relevant. But if you choose to work in a religious environment, you're taking on a responsibility to adhere to that value system. And I don't think that's unreasonable.
Well, it's a debate that obviously has a way to go with the government's own religious
anti-discrimination
laws. Amanda Stoker, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.